All right, everyone, welcome back. Ever been in a meeting where things get a little, shall we say, heated?
Oh, I think we've all been there.
Right, and sometimes the person trying to smooth things over just ends up making it worse. Makes you wish there was a pro on hand, someone who knew how to navigate those choppy waters.
Definitely. That's where a skilled mediator can really make a difference.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got a ton of info from RoleCatcher, this career development platform that breaks down all sorts of different paths. And today, it's all about mediation. But we're not just looking at what they do. We're going to figure out if it might be the right fit for you.
And it's a fascinating field, especially now. A lot of people think mediators are like judges. They're to lay down the law and tell everyone what to do.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely heard that one.
But it's so much more nuanced than that.
Right. RoleCatcher makes that super clear right from the get-go. They define mediators as neutral facilitators. So less about dictating a solution and way more about helping everyone find their own path forward.
Exactly. And that right there, that focus on finding your own solution, that's huge. Think about it. We see that desire for agency everywhere. Healthcare, education, even in business. People want to be part of the process, not just handed a solution from on high.
It's true. And I think that's one reason mediation is becoming so popular, right? It's not about one side winning and one side losing.
Exactly. It's about finding a resolution that works for everyone.
Okay, but here's where I got really interested, and this can surprise me. When I started looking at the skills RoleCatcher says you need as a mediator, it wasn't just the typical be a good listener stuff, though that's definitely important.
Right. Active listening is key.
Totally. But they had things like systems analysis listed. I mean, that stopped me in my tracks. Systems analysis.
I know, right? At first glance, it might seem a bit out of place, but it actually makes perfect sense when you dig deeper. Think about it. A good mediator isn't just trying to calm everyone down in the moment. They're trying to understand the entire system that led to that conflict in the first place.
So true. That makes a lot of sense.
It could be the company culture, unspoken office politics, power dynamics, past conflicts. All these things feed into the tension. So that's systems analysis in action.
It's like you're a detective, but instead of solving crimes, you're solving conflicts.
Exactly. And you need to be able to see those connections to be effective.
Totally. And then there were other skills listed, like persuasion, judgment, and decision-making. I mean, those aren't exactly what you picture when you imagine a mediator, but they're crucial.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine you're mediating a business dispute, right? You need to not only understand everyone's arguments, but also predict potential pitfalls, anticipate roadblocks, and nudge them towards an agreement that's actually sustainable, something they can stick with.
Right, because what good is a solution if it just blows up a week later?
Exactly. So yeah, persuasion, judgment, decision-making, those are all super relevant.
It's way more complex than some people might think. It's not just about being a good listener, though obviously that's important. You need a whole other level of strategic thinking.
It's true. It's a very nuanced skill set.
But let's say you're completely on board. You're like, yep, this is me. I'm meant to be a mediator. Well, RoleCatcher doesn't exactly paint a rosy picture of the job hunt. They pretty much call it out as brutal.
Yeah, they don't sugarcoat it.
No, they definitely don't. They talk a lot about automated recruitment, how it's basically like throwing your resume into a black hole and hoping for the best.
And this is where understanding the field as a whole becomes super important. It's one thing to be a skilled mediator, but you also have to navigate the job market itself.
It's like you need a whole other set of skills just to get your foot in the door.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher is very upfront about that, which I appreciate. They emphasize tailoring your application, using the right keywords, so those AI systems actually pick you up. It's a whole different ballgame.
So it's not just competing against other people, you're competing against algorithms too.
Pretty much. And those algorithms, they don't care about your charming personality. They want to see those keywords.
That's honestly a little unsettling.
It's the reality we live in.
Okay, well, before we spiral into a full-on robot takeover existential crisis, I do want to hear more about what RoleCatcher has to say about actually building a career in mediation. They break it down into these different stages, which I found super helpful, from entry level all the way up to like senior mediator.
It's a really smart way to approach it, especially for someone just starting out.
Right, because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, you can be a junior mediator, but what does that even mean in real life?
And that's what I like about RoleCatcher. They don't just throw these vague titles at you. They actually give you a glimpse into what each stage might look like in practice.
Right, like they paint this really realistic picture of the entry level. You're not, swooping into mediate high-stakes international disputes right off the bat.
Definitely not. It's a lot of, foundational work research, shadowing more experienced mediators, attending mediations, taking notes, maybe even handling logistics like scheduling and that kind of thing.
It's all the behind-the-scenes stuff that's, essential but not always glamorous.
Exactly. It's like any other field, you got to learn the ropes before you can start calling the shots.
Totally. And then as you move into that junior mediator role, that's where you start to take on more responsibility, right?
Yeah, you're doing more hands-on work, conducting interviews, analyzing evidence, maybe even drafting those initial mediation proposals. It's where you start to really apply those conflict resolution techniques we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so you've put in the work, you've honed your skills, and now you've reached that next level. You're a full-fledged mediator. What I found really interesting here is how RoleCatcher talks about this shift towards a more strategic mindset.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you're not just assisting anymore. You're the one steering the ship.
Right. You're managing your own cases. Make those judgment calls using all those advanced negotiation techniques we talked about.
And the stakes get higher, too. You're dealing with more complex cases, maybe more intense personalities. Your decisions carry more weight.
It's a whole other level of responsibility.
Really?
And then just when you think it can't get any more intense, there's the senior mediator level. RoleCatcher describes it as a leadership role, which makes sense.
Yeah, you've reached the top of the pyramid at that point. You're not just mediating disputes, you're shaping the field itself.
Exactly. You might be mentoring new mediators, developing training programs, influencing policy, that kind of thing. It's a natural progression from those early days of taking notes and scheduling meetings.
It shows how experience builds on itself. You start with those foundational skills, and over time, you gain the expertise and the credibility to guide others.
It's pretty impressive when you think about it.
Yeah.
But let's be real for a second. RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from the downsides of this career path either. They lay out the pros and cons very clearly.
Which is so important, because it's not always easy. I mean, burnout is a huge issue in this field.
Oh, absolutely. You're constantly dealing with other people's problems, often highly emotional ones. That takes a toll.
It does.
Yeah.
And, you can be the most skilled mediator in the world, but if the parties involved aren't willing to budge, you're not going to get anywhere.
So true. You're kind of at the mercy of other people's willingness to work together, which I imagine can be incredibly frustrating at times.
It can be. And that's why self-awareness is so crucial here. Like, as you're listening to all this, think about yourself, your personality, your strengths and weaknesses. Are you someone who thrives in those high-pressure situations? Can you stay neutral when emotions are running high?
Those are good questions to ask yourself, because not everyone is cut out for this kind of work. You have to be comfortable with ambiguity, with the fact that not every conflict has a neat and tidy resolution.
Exactly. It's about finding a career that aligns with who you are, not just what sounds good on paper.
Yeah.
And speaking of finding the right fit, RoleCatcher has this really interesting tool called AI interview prep that I think is worth talking about.
Oh, yeah. I was curious about that. It sounds kind of like next level stuff. What is it exactly?
Basically, it's like having a secret weapon for your job hunt, especially these days, where it feels like everyone's vying for the same positions.
Oh, tell me about it. The competition is fierce out there. So how does this AI interview prep thing give you an edge?
Think of it like this. You're stepping into the arena, right? But instead of facing a lion, it's a hiring manager, and the weapons are your experience and how well you can talk about it.
Okay, I like that analogy. So RoleCatcher is like your gladiator coach, getting you ready for battle.
Exactly. And it's not just about having some vague stories about conflict resolution. They have this massive database, over 120,000 interview questions, and they're all specific to different career paths, including mediation.
Wow, 120,000 questions. That's a lot to prep for.
It is, but that's the point. It's like they've mapped out every possible question a hiring manager could throw at you. And they don't just throw questions at you, they help you craft really strong answers.
So it's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it.
Exactly. You could have a ton of experience, but if you can't articulate it clearly, if you can't connect the dots for them and show how those experiences translate into valuable skills, you're not doing yourself any favors.
And that's where the AI feedback comes in.
Precisely. It analyzes your responses, highlights areas for improvement. Maybe you're being too vague, or maybe you're using too much jargon. The AI picks up on all that.
It's like having a personal coach in your back pocket, giving you real-time feedback.
That's a great way to put it. And it makes a huge difference.
I bet. So we've talked a lot about how technology is changing how we find jobs, but it's also changing how disputes are being resolved, right?
Absolutely. We're seeing it more and more. Online dispute resolution platforms, virtual mediation rooms. It's definitely changing the landscape.
Which makes me wonder, what does the future of mediation look like in this increasingly digital world?
It's a great question. Will we have AI mediators? Will we be settling legal battles in the metaverse?
I mean, it sounds far-fetched, but who knows? Technology is changing so rapidly.
It is. But here's the thing to remember. Even with all the advancements in AI and automation, some things never go out of style.
Like what?
Like empathy, like critical thinking, the ability to connect with people on a human level, to find that common ground. Those are the skills that will always be essential for effective mediation, no matter what the technology looks like.
That's a good point. You can have all the fancy algorithms in the world, but if you can't understand where people are coming from, emotionally, you're not going to get very far.
Exactly.
Well said. Well, on that note, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about. It's been fascinating exploring the world of mediation with you. We've covered a lot of ground, from the skills you need and the challenges you might face to the evolving role of technology in this field. And who knows what the future holds? Maybe we'll all be mediating in virtual reality someday.
Maybe. But until then, for anyone out there who's considering this career path, I'd say go for it. It's challenging, absolutely, but it's also incredibly rewarding. If you're passionate about helping people find common ground, if you thrive in those high-stakes situations, mediation might just be the perfect fit.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll let you get back to your day. This has been The Deep Dive. Remember, even in our increasingly digital world, it's those human skills, empathy, communication, problem solving that truly make a difference.
Here.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.